Yeah, we look good here. We'll give it 2 more minutes or so and then we'll get started. All right, I'll go ahead and do a quick intro here. We might have a couple more people trickle in, but that's okay. Um, Thanks everyone for taking the time to join us at the speaker series tonight. My name's Allie Ryan, for any of you that don't know. And I work as a tech employer specialist on the team. I report to Shannon Sheehy and my counterparts in Northern Kentucky, and in Eastern Kentucky are Monica Remy and David York, respectively. And I work for the Louisville area. Um, really excited for Michelle to be here with us tonight. I initially saw Michelle's presentation at the Women in Tech Summit at IU Bloomington, where she's a lecturer. And I thought that it would be a really great talk to share with you all in case, we have had people go through the program and say maybe programming is not for me, but I am interested in tech. So it's a great dive into various careers, especially along the sales alley. We have a few more guest speakers series planned for this month, always on Mondays at 6 p.m. So keep an eye on the Slack channels for announcements on those. Always keep an eye out for the Tech Career newsletter, and any other events that we have coming up will be in the announcements. For modular folks, if you're attending as part of your career readiness requirement, please remember to fill out the Google form in your Google Classroom to get credit for attending. Um, be sure to keep yourself muted throughout the presentation, but you're welcome to use the chat for questions and comments. We will go through those questions with a Q&A at the end. Also welcome at the end to come off mute and ask questions. So with that, I'll give it over to Michelle, and she'll take us through her awesome talk. Thanks, Michelle.
Hey, thank you. So good evening. I'm really happy to have an opportunity to speak with you this evening. I am a lecturer as part of the Center for Global Sales Leadership at Indiana University in Bloomington. I teach two specific classes. One is around consultative selling, and the other one is the Advanced Sales Practicum. I came or hail from being an IU alumni, and after a 30-year career in technology, decided to hang up my sales bag and come back to the university that I loved and to help work with students who are interested in going into a career in sales. And obviously, my background is pushing students who are interested in tech when they didn't even know these positions would be available to them. So that is kind of how we came up with the topic for this meeting. As she said, I did speak at a recent event. Within that 30 years of my career, I spent a majority of that at Oracle Corporation, which obviously they have the database and the very technical space, but they also have a very large business application business, which is the area that I focused it in. And then I worked with some different startups that, of course, got acquired. But the last company I was at was DocuSign, which we sold e-signature and our contract lifecycle management solution. So that is where I landed as an enterprise sales rep. I've worked with clients from SMB, small, medium business, all the way through enterprise to the likes of the Office Depots of this world, huge, large companies selling technology in it. I apologize. I'm going to go back and forth between monitors because I don't usually use Google Meet. So I have to drive the PowerPoint from a different screen than I can. So hopefully this will not be too distracting. So I used this slide in my presentation we gave at Women in Technology. And the reason why I did this was I kind of usually like to start out with an opener. So I always will ask my students in particular, like, close your eyes for a second. It's probably the only time in this meeting you'll be able to close your eyes. But ultimately, imagine if you could have the thrill of landing a game-changing deal that would impact real lives. The deep satisfaction of really getting to understand and guide a client to success using some type of cutting-edge technology, having the ability to collaborate with a team with innovation and growth, having an opportunity to use your skills, whether it be the new technology just learned, communication and business acumen, and really, having an opportunity where you can rewrite the future of technology. So you can open your eyes up right now. This isn't just a dream. This is a reality for what kind of careers are available from a sales perspective. I did want to start the talk of, like, how did I land in this universe? It was truly by dumb luck. I was a finance and accounting major at Indiana. I landed in a corporate accounting department, and my first job out of college was actually in Lexington, Kentucky. So I left the state of Indiana and moved to Lexington and started down the path of working in accounting and was working in spreadsheets and corporate stuff in order to keep the lights on. And I'm like, man, this is like putting hot glue gun sticks in my eyeballs. I'm like, I can't imagine doing this every day. And so they ended up, they had a project. They were in the process of implementing a new system, accounting system, because Lexmark had spun off from IBM. And they said, hey, how would you feel about going to 2 weeks of training to learn reporting? Data analytics, more or less. Back in the day, it wasn't called that, but reporting, how to build financial reports using a tool, how to build transactional reports, how to build management reports in this tool. So they sent me on my way. I went out to Dallas for a couple weeks and came back and had the opportunity within Lexmark. They had 8 different business units. And here I am, this young 22-year-old person who doesn't know anything about anything. And I'm going out and interviewing all of these executives of how we're going to help build their management and financial reports inside of the business application that we had acquired. And from that, and interviewing people, figuring out what they needed, how we would go about taking those business requirements and translating them into the application, I went back and started programming. I wouldn't call it programming, but using the tools I learned, the basic framework of the reporting, and started building reports and dashboards. And from that, figured out, wow, like, if I can do this for them, I'm gonna go work for the company that sells this product. I mean, this is like the best gig ever. So I went, I interviewed with the company down in Atlanta. That's how I ended up getting to Atlanta. So I spent 30 years in Atlanta and said, this is awesome. I get to go and help companies implement. I'm building reports that matter, that's helping them run their business. And that's kind of how I, stupidly fell into the role of tech. So the agenda for this evening, and again, you can ask any questions as we go, is kind of breaking it out into all the different roles that are available in technology from a sales perspective. It's not just one little box. There's a lot of different roles that are available. What kind of skills do you need to do that? The presentation we gave last week was on women and leaders, so we're not going to probably all focus on the last couple areas, but we can spend a lot of time on the kind of the roles that play into the space. So curious, you can put this into chat. What does the number 8 mean to you? I always like to do something to get people thinking. What does the number 8 mean to you? Let's see. People saying an infant. Oh, I like it like that. 2 donuts. Somebody's hungry. Any other guesses? We got donuts and people that are hungry. All right. Well, interestingly enough, the tech space for sales is an $8 trillion business. So $8 trillion by 2025. It is a huge growing, even more so. And now you layer on all these different new applications that are coming out every day. And I'm sure everybody here knows about AI. The statistics are showing that there'll be an increase in sales reps and sales engineers for these different positions. And the nice part about these roles is you don't have to know a line of code. Like, I am not a coder. My brain does not work that way. So when Allie got on the call and she's like, yeah, we're teaching these people how to do C+ and Java. And I'm like, I can talk all of that stuff. Like, I know what I'm talking about, but if you put me in front of a blank screen and asked me to write a thing of code, I'd tell you were smoking something, because it isn't going to happen. I'm just not wired that way. And that's why I ended up landing into implementation and pre-sales and sales role, because I can't go code. That's just not what I know how to do. But what's great about this area is just there's awesome job security. They pay well. You're always working with the latest and greatest technology, which is what I love. Typically higher salaries go into the tech space, or the tech companies have been very lucrative for me and the career that I had in the tech space. So when we think about the different types of roles, this is when we're going to delve into kind of all of the different areas. There really are 3 different areas you can look to go into. There's the software aspect, which is like most organizations have moved into software as a service. There's the hardware space, the physical device, the Internet of Everything on devices. And then there's all of the services that go along with supporting the software and the hardware. And then underneath that, there really are 3 different areas that teams of roles get involved. There's the pre-sales side. So really they're identifying prospects, they're understanding requirements, they're going in and they're showcasing. So if you like to showboat and present, you're demoing your solution, you're sharing like how the vision of what your product or service is going to do for them is going to help add value to their business. That's the pre-sales side of the house. There's post-sales. So maybe you like to do the onboarding, the implementation, the project planning, setting up and configuring the application. And again, it could be coding, it could be learning the basics. Like I learned Salesforce, I learned Oracle, the business application side of it enough to configure the basics of what you need to do. And then there's the third area, client success. All of these companies are set up typically in a renewal an organization. So if they're trying to renew business, they need to have long-term success with those customers. They're measuring churn of customers that are leaving. So they're always trying to get user adoption elevated, help clients continue to elevate and learn more about how the solution works to keep them sticky and using the product or service and the applications. So that is really kind of the crux of those 3 areas. And so what I'm going to do now is kind of deep dive into what we call the different pre-sales roles. What I talk about with my students a lot is that I wish there was like a magic bullet that you could go and easily know what each company names these jobs, but they differ based on the software company, that how they're set up and structured. So when you're job searching, you could be looking for things that say sales development rep, the whole word, or they may put SDR in the title. They may put business development rep or BDR, market development rep or MDR, associate AE, inside sales rep. All of these titles are applicable, and you'll really have to look into the job description to see what that role is doing. Typically, that role is very focused on qualifying leads, finding opportunities, setting up meetings. They're doing a lot of that on the front end of the sales process. So if you get jazzed about emailing and cold calling and all of that, getting people excited about tech. So you're calling into IT people potentially and being able to say, hey, we've got this awesome Ruby on Rails product, Java based, blah, blah, blah. You try to get meetings set up with those individuals. The other role on the right side would be outside sales reps, account executives, account managers, renewal managers. So each one of those roles has a different life in and of itself. What usually happens is an outside sales rep or an account exec is the quota carrying, bag carrying rep. So in essence, like when I was at DocuSign, I carried a $3 million quota. And then I would work collaboratively with my extended team. So my inside reps, my SDRs, my BDRs. I would work with a proposal team, which I'll talk about in a minute, and my sales engineers on crafting the appropriate business process, how we're going to solve a problem for the company and how we're going to add value to the sales process and those types of roles. So if you don't mind carrying a quota, it's usually set up in like a 60-40, 60% base salary, 40% variable. You can make a lot of money if you can get into a rep role. I will tell you usually have to start and earn your stripes as a BDR and SDR to get moved into that role. But if you can master that, endurance of cold calling out of the box and get it nailed. I literally had a student I talked to today. He's been out of school for 6 months and he's quickly rised from BDR to an account manager, account executive, by, figuring it out very fast. So the other two roles are account manager and renewal manager. So a lot of people like to be in that role because it's more of a farmer role, which means you have an installed book of business, installed customers, and you're working on renewing them. You're also looking for add-on opportunities that are inside of those accounts. So they're not as, that high pressure of, carrying the massive quota, but there's a lot of great benefit and dollar associated to those roles. Usually they're in the 6 figures that those people are making renewal managers. So yeah, it can be a very lucrative role. Again, just you have to know your personality on where you fit into that process. The job that I love the best, which I'll talk about last year, there's the proposal manager and value engineer and writer. So I'll get to my favorite job last. But the proposal manager and writer, usually if in a large software company, if you like writing like the business requirements and answering RFPs, requests for proposals, requests for information, you're a technical person and you can answer the RFP with like, the Java does this, this does that. You're basically going through and helping the sales team with that information. There are a lot of roles where they're looking for proposal people to assist the sales team with the writing of the requirements. In addition to that would be the value engineer. So if we're trying to sell value, meaning a business case, and you like working with spreadsheets in order to build a return on investment, if you're that brain-powered person, you can also be involved with the sales team helping with that business case, payback, and all of that. My favorite job, which I would think maybe most of you on the phone, if you're kind of going down the coding boot camp route, would be to be a sales engineer. So I would say out of my 30 years in sales, I probably was in that role for a good 25 of 20-ish of that. That role basically is the heartbeat of, your product. You're the one who knows all the intricacies of what it does. You're working with the sales rep on the presentation. You're delivering the presentation and the content to the customer. Usually the sales rep's the one getting the meeting, building relationships, negotiating price and all of that. You're the one that's really in there highlighting all the features, advantages, benefits of what the solution will offer to the client and the value that it will provide to the customer. So it's like the so what, who cares, and why is it important, what I'm showing you. So that role can be all different names. So I swear every company has a different way they name them. Sometimes they'll call them a solution architect, a product specialist, a pre-sales person, a sales consultant, a system engineer, a sales engineer. You pretty much have to job search on almost every single one of those titles. That job is extremely well paid. Usually the reason why it's well paid is that once you're trained and you know the product that you're demoing, it takes a lot of investment for the company to be able to get you to where you need to be. So we usually don't see the level of turnover in that role. It's like the best hidden gem nugget secret job that no one knew existed. But usually those people can make base salary starting out of like with their variable about 103K, and it can go higher than that if you come in with some level of business experience or industry experience from your other universe. I had people on my team that were like 28 years old. You'll probably cry, but they were making 155 base and their variable took them to 240. So big money in this area. I loved it. It was a great run, being in a sales engineering role. I don't have a slide for it, but there is an organization called the Pre-Sales Collective. So if you look up the Pre-Sales Collective, they're a community of all pre-sales engineers all over the country and the world. They offer a lot of free content that you can take a look at about that. They do have a job board specifically around pre-sales roles, and they do offer a boot camp as well. That boot camp has taken people who've been teachers and turned them into sales engineers in their boot camp. And they used to offer it in a way, so don't quote me, but they had it in a way where you could either pay to do the boot camp, or the company who would hire you paid for your boot camp cost after you took it. So I'm not sure what they're doing now with that, but it was a pretty a nice way to kind of get into the industry that way. So when you go into like a rep role, you're typically, if you like the more risk, you like the more like hunting, looking for like the beast that you want to shoot. Really what you're focused on in a day in the life in a rep is you're figuring out your pipeline, where you're going to get your opportunities. You're spending a lot of time prospecting, cold calling, outreaching. Once you get meetings, you're getting the meetings, you're going on sales call, you're engaging with your clients, you're doing a lot of follow-ups. You're working with your extended team. So there's BDRs, your SCs. You're constantly being trained on the latest and greatest technology of what's going on. So there's never a dull moment. This job is just, you're constantly working with different clients at different stages and different phases of the sales process. And you have a lot of networking opportunities in your own organization as well as outside your organization with conferences, trade shows, you name it. You're doing a little bit of everything in that role. So I enjoyed that job a lot. There's a lot of flexibility with that role, but a lot of responsibility for carrying a big quota. The sales and value engineer, where the differences become is you're doing a lot of the same things as the rep. You're working collaboratively with them. You're spending time doing technical prep, though, because you're going to be the one who's putting the presentation slides together, the demonstration, the proof of concept. If you're going to take a pilot into an organization that's going to test, see if they like your product or service, you're helping answer those RFIs and RFPs. You may be working on, some of the business case with the value engineer talking about which functionality you're going to be proposing and working with them to come up with the dollar and cents are surrounding that. So you're pretty much doing everything in the sales cycle except for prospecting and cold calling, which most people do not like to do. And you're not negotiating and closing the deal, but you're doing everything in the middle of the sales process, which is why for me, I found it to be the most rewarding role to be in pre-sales. Do we have any questions before I hit post-sales, Allie?
Not in the chat so far, but if anybody has questions, they want to come off mute really quickly, feel free. We can give it a couple seconds. I was just wondering if you could confirm the name of the boot camp about sales engineer. What's it called again?
Pre-sales collective.
Pre-sales collective. Yeah, I remember that from. Alex raised his hand. He has a question. Go ahead, Alex.
So just a quick question in regards to like the sales engineer aspect. Like I have a very sales background. I've been in sales almost my entire life. Now, granted, I do like real estate, financing, things of that nature. Kind of how, because a lot of the tech jobs that I've looked into, I've had people that work for SaaS that have gotten me interviews, things of that nature. A lot of it, they don't kind of incorporate my past experience. And just kind of, I guess, how would you step into that, the technological sales of like a engineer and things of that nature with like past experience in sales?
That's interesting you say that because, yeah, I mean, like for real estate, there are companies that built platforms for the real estate software, right? Like there's a lot of companies that have built platforms. Zillow has their own platform, obviously. And you've been in sales. There's, I think, a company called MRI is another one. There's a bunch. So I find that, I think with your industry background experience, if you looked at some of the software companies in that particular industry as they start as a launching point, just because you already know the persona of the people you would be calling in on, being in real estate or financial or whatever, you probably would have a pretty good in. You need to network on LinkedIn like nobody's business and to people specifically in that company to talk about their experience and how, you know, you can evolve into something like that. I mean, like, yeah, I did not land in sales when I started. I kind of transitioned into being a seller after being an implementation person of just doing setup and configuration. And then it kind of took off and launched from there. So yeah, there is a website. I don't think I'm sharing my screen right now. I will put it in the chat for you. There's this awesome website, and I just put it in the chat for you, called Select Hub. And what's nice about that site is any possible business application software you can think of is out there. So for you, probably real estate, there's probably a bucket in here somewhere that's looking at like real estate or construction or real estate development software. Click around, you're going to see a launch of companies that are going to come up for you in that link. And you can then start, you know, looking at digging into those companies and seeing kind of what their offers look like and are. I mean, I know when I've worked at Oracle, we loved having people who had industry experience. Like we could train you on the software. If you already can talk the talk, that was a big part of what we were looking for in some of the areas that I was in. So don't give up on that one. I would continue to look. Any other questions?
I also put the link in there for anybody who's interested in looking into Pre-Sales Collective. I think they have like an email list you can sign up for if you're just kind of casually interested and stuff like that. So feel free to look into that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then the next area is really like the post-sales. That's where I really started after getting out of accounting, is the post-sales area. There are a bunch of different types of opportunities. So there are what we call functional consultants. So again, I wish companies named them the same, but they don't. There's functional consultants, product specialists, implementation consultant, business consultants. Usually there's the big five, but there's also a ton of boutique firms out there that you can actually go and look at based on whatever business application you want to go work on. So for example, like Salesforce has a humongous ecosystem. Apps Exchange has tons of their partners out there across the United States and the world. And if you get like on Salesforce, for example, you could do trailheads, get yourself trained up, do all the trailheads, take their tests, hook up with some of these implementation companies, these boutiques, and start going and implementing Salesforce. There's always a need for people who have that level of expertise and knowledge, and that's a post-sales. And so typically, we'll talk about what that role does kind of on a day-to-day here in a second. So that's one area I started in. That's how I kind of left the accounting world and moved into setting up and configuring reports. The other area is the engagement manager, consulting services, and consulting sales manager. So I think, Alex, you were the one who mentioned you've sold before. So those titles typically are the person who helps go out with a software company and scopes the project for a particular industry. So let's say if real estate software is the product, they have a group of people who are engagement managers or consulting services, and they'll tell you, hey, it takes us 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks to set up and configure. You're going to need a project manager, an implementation consultant. So they're tied as a seller carrying a quota, but it's all on services. So that's the whole service side of the business, because every product has some level of services attached to it. That goes along with that. The other aspect of that would be the higher level project managers and project directors. So if those of you are technical, want to go get PMI certified, that would be another area that you could move into as a project manager. So if you don't like the coding, now you know enough details about the coding, you could get PMI and manage those projects where other people are doing the actual coding work below. There's also onboarding specialists, client executives, training specialists, support specialists. Again, all of these kind of have different names. But some of them can be you're just training new people how to use the product. Some of it's they're onboarding and you're literally have people who are, that's not like a technical long implementation. So they get your time for a day or two to help them set up and configure something. So it's a much shorter process to get through that process. So day in the life of more of that implementation type of role is you're working on a project, you're reviewing your tasks, you have meetings all the time, you're configuring systems, you're doing analysis, mapping of requirements, unit testing, system testing, you're building training and documentation for your clients, you're meeting. You're constantly learning and using your product knowledge because it's going to be changing. There's new enhancements and new things happening on a quarterly basis within different solutions. So this is the world I come from, not as much like building something from the ground up, like, complete custom development. A lot of companies don't want to go custom develop anymore because they can buy prepackaged applications in the cloud. And so if that gets them at least 80% of the functionality that they're looking for, they can figure out how to fix the other 20% that they need, is what my experience is. And the last area is client success. There's this whole universe of roles that are around customer success. They're advocates, specialists, technical account managers, engineers, again, more some onboarding. So these individuals are solely responsible for making sure that company is using the product, they're adopting it, they're hearing about what's coming, what's new. We're talking about when upgrades are happening. We're helping them with any problems, challenges they may have. It's kind of a middle step between the customer support team and the sales but they're on the kind of the front end of the business, not the customer support team. But they're working to make sure the client's happy. Bottom line, that's what they're doing. They're trying to make sure the client is going to continue using the software. So I've had several people who've done this. It's also been a very lucrative 6-figure job, working on a portfolio of companies. So usually if you're working enterprise accounts, you might just have one account, but you might have 15, 20 of these types of very large accounts that you are managing at all different aspects, proactively reaching out to them, technical, troubleshooting with them, their usage, talking about renewals with them, all of the things, keeping them, in the loop on everything that, they need to know to be successful in their job. So lots of opportunities as those types of roles as well. From a technical skill set perspective, really, I think any type of sales role, as long as you can show there's some level of grit, sound like Alex, you're a sales rep, so you know what that's about. Just being able to manage your emotional intelligence, understanding customers' pains, challenges, and concerns, spending time building trust with them. Any of these roles, effectively managing your time is critical, because you'll have a huge list and there's only so many hours in the day. So figuring out what's the right thing to work at the right time. Independent thinking, and the biggest one is telling stories. Any job you're in tech, you're usually focused on telling some kind of story, making relationships, building rapport. All of that is a big component of what you'll do on the job. Also, tech sales in any of these capacities, really, you're focused on being empathetic, persuasive, resilient. You got to have a thick skin if you're in any of these jobs, because in some cases you are the punching bag, depending upon which of these roles you happen to be in. Because usually if you're in the front end and you sold them the shiny object, then the implementation team comes in and they figure out that the shiny object wasn't exactly like what was told in the sales process, and then they get beat up, and then you got the customer success team who's even being beat up even more. So I'm just kidding. It's not that bad, but you really just have to have the ability to be curious, connected, a lot of collaboration with lots of different people. Relationships is important, nothing different than any other job that you would have. But again, the difference in these types of roles that I like is it's not just about internal politics going on at your company, but you're also dealing with all the internal politics at every single company that you're working an opportunity. So you could have 20 opportunities on your table at any given time, and you're managing all of what's dramas going on at their company, and you're managing some drama that's on at your company. And so you kind of have to be a little ADHD to be able to handle the volume of stuff that's happening. Which is why for me it was a good fit, because I am ADHD to be able to, handle all of that at one time. I think a lot of these other slides really, Allie, were more about for women. We talked a lot about women in our past meeting, about how we're trying to kind of evolve and bring more women into the technology space. So I think we have a lot of dudes on the phone, so I'm not going to go through all of this. But any questions or comments you have for me? And somebody's just joining the call. I'm more than happy to take anything you want to ask questions about, want to know about. What can I do to help you?
Feel free to raise a hand or just come off mute, anything. Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
Just real quick. So one thing I ran into a lot, and it just kind of more clarification. A lot of times you see consultative sales. My buddy who helped me out, he's a customer relations manager. And, one thing he was like, hey, big thing to harp on is consultative sales.
Yep.
And anytime I've brought it up in an interview or anything, it's kind of they don't see what I do as consultative sales. So I I make loans for people. I help people buy houses. I start from the beginning to the very end of the sales process. I'm, start to finish, but I'm not face to face with these people. I do it all remotely. And I've had plenty of positions where I've done face to face, and I consider it all consultative, but I don't know if I'm getting the correct idea of consultative sales.
I mean, usually it's solution selling. So it's how you are listening to the requirements that your customer is telling you, and then turning it into how is your solution going to add value to them. So what is the business benefit? What is it worth to them? What's the value of it to them? That's, and taking them through the sales process. So from beginning to end, right? From you bring them in, you figure out and do discovery and uncover everything. You're then coming back, you're presenting your solution based on what you heard. You're building a business case, you're putting to proposals together in order to close the business. So that's really, it's solution selling, if they don't like the word consultative selling. So if you're selling different types of loan packaging, like offering them, like you're listening to them and based on what they're telling you, let's say you're offering them a 7 ARM versus a 30 fix versus a 15. I don't know you know what I mean? I'm just knowing from
Nail on the head.
Yeah, like you're advising them based on like their financial experience or where they're at in their personal journey as to like, does it make sense to do, which I don't think people are doing interest only anymore. You may tell me different, but which is the right, path. So you need to be selling it in terms of like that, right? Like
I'm active listening and solution based off of it.
I have to build rapport. I can't just assume that they're not shopping other loan vendors as well. I'm making recommendations to help them. I'm showing them what the interest payouts would be, one versus the other, and then based on their financial state, like this is why, what I mean. You're kind of just talking them more through all of that. That's what you kind of are going to have to be able to parlay right into something different.
Also working with like maybe a first-time home buyer. I know there's different grants and stuff like that for first-time home buyers. So yeah, just like tying that in, kind of what comes to mind for me.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Michelle? Yeah, go ahead, Reed.
Sure. First, thank you very much for your time. This has been extremely informative and very, very interesting. My question is basically, if you're prospecting in enterprise tech sales, how does that really work nowadays? Is it really kind of heavily networking based via conferences and trade shows and LinkedIn, or does cold calling still factor into that? Am I forgetting a prospecting method? What does that look like in your experience?
So I came out 2 years ago. So I came to IU a year and a half. So I'm basically in my 4th semester here. We pretty much rely on cold calling into the accounts. So my book was only 25 accounts. So you can only imagine. I mean, there's only so many calls you can do into different departments at DocuSign. I mean, I got to the point where, I literally was like, with my MDR, it was like, please cease and desist. Like you can only call in so many times. Like you can only send so many emails in. Like, we know who we need to be talking to. Like we can't, it's just, so it becomes then like a numbers game, right? Like, how much can you keep bothering people till you get the leave us alone, So yeah, I think a big part of enterprise depends on how big your book is. Like my book was small, and that was fundamentally by the time I got to my 4th year there, I was like, I'm out, because you got 25 accounts, right? There's only so much you can do when they already are on a long-term contract with somebody else for 36 months and they're not churning off of them, and you're not going to change I mean, there was just so many different factors. Like you kind of could write half your book off because they're not going to go with you because they already got something else in place, you know? And then you multiply that by, okay, we're blowing emails. Like our MDRs are told they need to email them daily. And I'm like, it's like, holy crap, please stop. Like you're killing me.
So with these small books of business, then it seems like it really becomes, if you're on the new business side of things, it becomes a much more long-term nurture play where you're trying to make that fine balance between informing them, keeping yourself front of mind without annoying the crap out of them.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah,
Gotcha.
for sure. And finding out the information, right? So like,
Mm.
you know, that's how I knew they were on Adobe, to figure out like, well, how much longer are you on that contract, right? So, and then it would become very interesting when they would buy another company. So like one of my clients was Inspire Brands. Well, they bought Dunkin' Donuts. Well, Dunkin' Donuts was one of our customers. So I knew it was going to be coming to an ugly head because the contract was coming up for renewal and they were an enterprise Adobe shop. So of course my management's like, well, what are you going to do to keep them? And I'm like, there's nothing we're going to do. We've tried every angle. Like you've got a new company now that's bigger, fatter, bolder, that's going to take over Dunkin', and Dunkin's going to have no say. They're going to be told what they got to do, you know? So I would recommend, like of all the space I sold, I loved mid-market. I liked emerging market. I liked the range between 50 million to like 250 million revenue companies, because, you're talking with the decision makers. Usually they're deciding between you and a boat because they're private. And it's you have a bigger book of business. Like you have more shots to shoot, right? Like you get, you know, you just have more in your book to go from than you do when you get to like, you know, you kind of got, after my age, I got pushed into enterprise, and I'm like, please no, like I don't want to do it. But
Absolutely. Yeah. Very cool. Thank you very much.
Anybody else have questions for Michelle?
we got people hanging on. I think Steven or Corey or somebody's got to ask.
No questions on my end, but yeah, no, thank you for your time. It's definitely been very informative.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think having the job titles, in case you all end up being interested, was one of the most interesting things.
You know, and I did find the other day, let me see if I can share this. I don't know. Let me see if I can share my desktop. Hold on. I'm going to stop presenting for a second. So there is something really cool that I found that you can do. I got to find the slide to pull up. So give me 1 second. So if you are job searching, I thought this was absolutely mind-blowing, brilliant. Hold on 1 second. I got to find the. No, it's not that one. Hold on 1 second. I just told my class about this last week. Oh yeah. Okay. Let me see if I can share my screen. Handling objections. Okay. You see my screen?
Yep.
All right. This thing is brilliant, y'all. Like so if you go into Google and you want to look for a specific job title, you can put in this entire string. Or if you want to just do one site at a time, because there's a lot of companies that don't use Indeed, don't use LinkedIn. You got to go searching. So these are like all of the different HR type of companies, like Workday and Smart Recruit, all these different ones. So you can literally put in like this string. So if I put in, oh, you know, it's not going to let me share and do that. So hold on, let me go off of, I got to share my desktop here, right? Stop presenting, share your This doesn't let you share your entire desktop, does it?
Not sure.
Okay, hold on.
Do you put
can.
it
It's
in the
in-
Chrome browser or do you,
Yeah, so which screen can you see right now?
we can see ourselves. So yeah, there you go.
See
Yeah,
that?
you just put it in there. Wow. Yeah, that's great.
Okay. So you can come in here. Can you see what I just did with this workable site?
Yep.
Okay, so you can come in here and you can go tools anytime and you can say, hey, I want to look in the past week, which maybe there isn't anything. But you can pull up by different sites. So I will cut and paste this into, and you can get more sophisticated. So for you coders out there, I'm putting it in the, you can actually do like and or statements. So if you want to do like, and I'm looking for a certain salary or a certain this or certain that, you can actually get more. Oh, I don't know why it's saving all this other stuff. Interesting. Ignore those other things, but you'll see the ability to change the string. So if you're looking for customer success or, and then you can do an and then parentheses, you just have to play with it. But I was amazed at what you can pull up.
Great. Yeah. I'll probably start using that because a lot of my job is job searching and sending jobs to folks. So
Yeah. So it's really good. Again, it's a work in process. I just learned about this last week, so I'm still playing with it myself to see what else you can come up with. But if you get it cleaned up even better, let me know.
cool. Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Well, thank you, Michelle, for going through all of this with us. I'm sure hopefully it'll be proved to be helpful for some. If anybody has questions Reed, did you want to ask another question?
Yeah, I've got one more question if we got time.
Of course.
Yeah. So in general, across the length of your career, keeping in mind your work as a sales engineer, is there a most common reason you receive a no from a prospect, regardless of what stage in the funnel it's been? Is it related to product cost or technical concerns or anything like that? Lack of trust or something like that?
Oh yeah. I mean, again, if it depends, you're going to get different objections when you're prospecting at the beginning than you're going to have when you're in an opportunity and you're working them through. So yeah, I mean, at the beginning, you could be told, I don't have time now. This isn't in my budget. I've got other priorities. Get back to me in 3 months. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff. When you're engaged in a process, this is where you have to be really smart about your time management and qualification. Are they just kicking tires? Because, again, the universe I come from in enterprise accounts, there are people who literally, this is all they do. They like evaluate crap all the time. And so, a lot of times if they're coming up for renewal on a solution, let's say it was DocuSign was my last company, they're evaluating, they're looking at, well, what kind of pricing can they get from me? Because they're going to go back to their current vendor and ask for better pricing. So, or if they go to RFP and, they've already been talking with 3 other vendors and you weren't part of those 3 that they've been talking to for the last year, you're what we call column fodder in an Excel spreadsheet. You got column A, vendor 1, 2, 3, and you're 4. You're not even on the page, right, of reality. And I had many companies that I worked with that were like that. Like I was working on educating, providing knowledge and awareness even before there was really an opportunity there. Because if I hadn't have done that, like I would not even be asked to the table a year from now. So, and in my management's perspective, they would have been like, well, why are you spending time on them? Because it's not something you're going to close this year. And I'm like, because that's the long game, right? I got to have stuff for a year from now. And I'm basically shooting myself in the foot if I don't do this, because I know we're not going to be even asked to be, at the table. So yeah, objections always. even at the 11th hour, like, yeah, oh yeah, I'm sorry, we just got acquired. We decided we're going to go with you, but we just found out we got acquired last night.
Oh, wow. That's a rough one. Oh, wow.
That happened to me. I had flown up to Philadelphia for a customer meeting and literally sat down, and everybody's cell phones in the room were going off from the customer, and they were like, oh, we have a mandatory meeting. We have to leave this room. We just got told we're being acquired, and we'd already just been told we were vendor of choice, and we were there for like a final meeting. It's like, say bye-bye, deal, after a year. Bye-bye.
Gosh.
Kiss of death.
That was fun. See you next time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
many stories like that. Yeah.
Dog bark. Excuse me.
That's okay. If any of you want to just, you can connect with me on LinkedIn if you're interested in looking at my network. I think I have it open. So I'm an unusual one. I covered all up and down the East Coast, but I also had at some point covered accounts pretty much everywhere. So I've got people from all over the universe. And then a lot of the people I've worked with at Oracle have now gone on to other companies all over. So I've got people in almost every possible city you can think of out there you can take a look at if you're trying to connect and network. So
Awesome.
let me know how I can help.
Thank you so much for your time, Michelle. You guys, this recording will be available for you if you want to kind of review it. Otherwise, we will see you next week on our next guest speaker series. Thank you so much again, Michelle. Appreciate you.
Have a great week.
All right. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.